Hi, everyone. I'm Harley Carnes. So good to be back. Glad to have you there, that's for sure. Today, I want to share something a little bit different, kind of dual discourse. Two topics that on the surface may seem different, but actually wind up meeting in the same place. One is deadlines, the kind that drive the news business, and as we'll see, everything else. The other is about the dreaded monster that some writers like to call writer's block. I'm here to say this: deadlines are real, writer's block is not. Now, this is not just about writing, but these ideas affect all of us no matter what we do. So let me explain what I mean by that. Well, first, a few words about deadlines in the news business. You're probably very, very aware of how pressing the deadline is for a newspaper reporter. It's been the subtext, it's been sometimes the very theme of a great many popular movies and books. The deadline is when the reporter has to have the news copy ready for press, or it doesn't get into the next edition of the paper. And if you are racing reporters at other papers with the same intention, the same story, guess what? The deadline really matters. In a newsroom, the clock is not just ticking, it is pounding, as though the hands on the clock weigh 6 pounds each. The morning paper, well, it goes to bed, as the saying goes, late at night. That's just the way it works. That's when the printing presses run and delivery trucks are gassed up and loaded and ready to go. Trains and planes get containers full of issues for distant delivery. There is a lot riding on that simple deadline. On TV or radio, the 6 o'clock news, well, it's happening at 6 o'clock, whether your script is ready or not, whether you're ready. On radio, that goes for the 2 o'clock news, and the 3, and the 4, and the 5, and every hour, on the hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, barring other programming, of course. In broadcasting, radio and television, that red light does not mean stop. It means open your mouth and go. You are on now. As an old friend and editor, Roger Norham, used to say in my earphones just before the gong, it's time to be good. Actually, what he used to say is time to be great. It was a reminder that a lot of work had gone into the sheaf of papers in my hand. Don't let us, most notably, don't let yourself down. We expect excellence. You have what it takes. Now show us and give it your best. Now, tell me how that is not true in whatever job or career you are in the middle of. I worked with my dad when I was younger, building houses. Before that, wiring houses and commercial buildings. If we were expected on the job site at 7 in the morning, you can bet we were closing the doors on the truck and hitching up our belts for the day at work at a quarter till. If you ain't early, you're late. And being late was just not allowed. A day late and $1 short, it's a very real thing. Dad used to say if we're late, then the sheetrock guys get a late start closing up the wall. And if they get a late start, guess what happens to the job? The trim guys have to wait. The painters get backed up. Starts with the carpenters, of course. Well, actually, it starts with the concrete workers who make measurements, pour the concrete for the footers of the slab, screed it smooth, and hope it dries before the skies open up. Then the carpenters start. Wood and nails and tape measures and talent turn a pile of boards into walls and joists and windows and doorways and trusses and rafters, and pretty soon the site is weathered in, and the electricians, that was us, and the plumbers and painters and trim and HVAC could get to it. If the job is to be done on time and within a budget, then you get it. There are a whole slew of deadlines that have to be met, and it sure enough matters, because that's how the bread winds up on the table. Seems to me that one of the areas not afflicted by deadlines is medical research. That's one business that seems to be the most open of open-ended, always in search of the breakthrough that will describe at last a finish line. But, I'm betting it's just my own ignorance showing when I say something like that. There is no doubt in my mind that even enterprises that seem to have no definable end on the calendar have plenty of high-pressure deadlines. If you're a pilot, there are a lot of deadlines in every flight, sequences of things that have to happen, and you don't want to be late if you want everything to work out okay. You don't, for example, want to put off lowering the gear until a grinding noise alerts you that you're just a little bit late. Imagine being an air traffic controller. You don't get to be late. Or a firefighter. How about a cop? A farmer, for God's sakes, who plants his crops late, misses the deadline, and pays for it when it's harvest time. Deadlines are staring us in the face every day. They are very real, and everybody knows it. Even kids who catch the bus to go to school have a deadline, and they do have to learn that. It comes to them. Got to be done with breakfast, be washed up, teeth brushed, books in order, dressed for school, and at the bus stop before it gets there. There are natural consequences for being late, too. Doesn't matter what the deadline is. In the news business, I've already touched on it. If you miss a deadline, you don't just miss the story. The story might as well die. Sometimes someone else tells it, or the audience moves on. You've made yourself and the rest of the newsroom momentarily irrelevant. Not cool. Now, that pressure might sound brutal, but actually it's a gift. It forces you to cut the fat, get to the truth, and write with clarity. I've covered hurricanes, election nights, even 9/11. There was never time to polish a phrase or linger over getting it perfect. Now, it had to be good. The story had to move from the street to the studio to the audience in real time, but what people wanted wasn't necessarily poetry. They wanted accuracy first and foremost. The deadline never blinks first. Here's a quick funny story, though. There was a news anchor, a woman whose name is not important, who came rushing into the ABC network studio, all breathless. She looked through the glass at the engineer who would be pushing the buttons for her and said, "Let's start early. I have a lot of stuff." He chuckled at the joke, and then he realized, she's actually serious. She was also new or something. Now, since I just told you about someone else, since I just told you a story about someone else, it's only fair that I tell one on myself, embarrassing as it was at the time and, well, as it is even right now. We used to do something at the network called the bottom of the hour update. And if truth be told, we did tend to take it a little bit lightly. Because you've got this great big newscast that thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people are listening to. And then at the bottom of the hour, you had 1 minute, little 1 minute thing that was mostly headlines. And you'd say to yourself in the quiet of moments that, it's not as important as the little one or as the big one. Well, one day, 1 hour, I forgot about it. I let everyone down, most notably my boss, my guru. He was liked, respected, revered, inventive. He was creative. And, of course, he didn't appreciate it at all. Nobody did. I mean, I got to tell you what it was like because we're all in one big room together, and I can see my editor and the writers and other people who are working on various things and producers and so forth in studios and everything. Everybody can turn and look. And I'm sitting at my desk, at my computer, just outside the little studio where the news originated. And bottom of the hour comes, and everybody expects to hear a newscast, short though it may be. And there's nothing. And they look over, and I'm sitting there like a dunce in my seat. And of course, everybody yelled, "Get in there!" And I jumped up. I ran in there. It's too late. Missed that one. Did not go on. Automated systems all across the country at radio stations that were automated, and there are quite a few, the automation machine goes, nothing's there. I mean, just trust me, this was not a good day. And my boss, to his great credit, did not fly off the handle and yell at me. he handed me a note with one sentence on it. And it said, a news anchor is never late for his newscast. I could have crawled under a dime. It was not good. And, of course, it never happened again. Now, that's deadlines. Writer's block, however, it's the imaginary excuse. We've all used it, but step away from the broadcast, the pressure cooker. At writing desks everywhere, in your own home, if you decide you want to write the next great American novel, or you want to write a story, whatever, you will come to a moment where you'll say to yourself, I can't write today. I've got writer's block. Well, I don't buy that. Writer's block is an excuse. Writer's block is fear in disguise. It's fear of failing. It's fear of not being good enough. Sometimes it's just plain old procrastination with a fancy name. In broadcast journalism, as I've already mentioned, you don't get the luxury of procrastination, of just putting it off. You write whether you feel like it or not, whether you've got anything really to say or not, because the words, whether they come easily or not, you've got to use them. You've got to put something down, and you know it. You know, it's the pressure that makes you do it. You learn real fast. Once you start typing, words lead to sentences, sentences lead to stories. Now, don't get me wrong. Every writer gets stuck along the line somewhere. When I started writing novels, I bumped smack into the so-called writer's block. Couldn't think of a word to write, and then I realized something. I was standing at the threshold of another choice in my life. If I actually got up from the typewriter, because I was blocked, it was a typewriter then, by the way, and started pacing around, I'd start playing that old game of failure with myself. The next step would be to get up, go to the kitchen, refill the water glass, pour something stronger, or, hey, while I'm here, what about those cookies? Maybe I'll make a quick sandwich. I really ought to call my son, or my other son, or one of my flight students who can't remember the difference between cumulus clouds and cirrus. In other words, everything else becomes the escape from the trap of being blocked. The other choice, stay put, in front of the typewriter keys, and write something, almost anything. A veteran reporter told me something useful many, many years ago. If you get stuck on the first story, write the second story. If you get stuck on the first page or the first chapter, start writing the second chapter. The trick is to put your brain into actual motion and put something on the paper other than unseen and invisible wishes. Hemingway had a trick. He said, write one true sentence. Just one. That's enough to break the spell. Now stop and think about that for a minute. That's genius, like everything else the guy did. Write one true sentence. If that's what you're thinking about, what one true sentence can I write here? What have I got? What do I have to work with? And you start thinking about the details that you want to express. All of a sudden, you're not stuck anymore. You're in the midst of it, you know? If you realize you don't know enough in that moment, do a little more research. In my case, I didn't know enough about my own character, so I made some notes. I fleshed him out sufficiently that if he were to walk up to me on the street and say howdy, I'd know his name before he introduced himself. That lesson has never left me, by the way. I can tell you that in a funny way, I don't write the novels. The characters do that. If you know who they are, all you have to do is create the situations for them, then sit back with your fingers on the keys and watch to see what they do. They will react as they would react if they were real enough to shake hands with or punch in the nose or make love to or run the other way because you know exactly what they'll do. Therefore, if you feel blocked because you're rusty, for example, write something, even if it's terrible. It'll get better. You can always throw away what you don't like, right? That's called editing. It'll get better as soon as you start listening to the story as it talks to you instead of the other way around. Control. That's what it's all about. You know, control's a funny thing. You only think you have it, so don't fret over that fact or you'll have another reason to get stuck. You'll try to hide behind writer's block. Don't go there. It is not real. It is a figment. People in other professions who are listening to me talk about this, poor me, I'm all blocked, can't think of anything to write. They must laugh. I mean, really. Surgeons can't say anything like that. Neither can your dentist, nor cops, nor lawyers, or judges, teachers. There's a good one. Sorry, kids, I'm having a mental blockage. Can't think of a thing to teach you today. Now, I have had the occasional teacher come in and say, I don't feel like it. That's different, but it's also very honest. Anyway, I guess that was about it. You know, I mean, I was thinking of something to say to wrap it up, but gee, I can't. I'm all blocked. Not really. Deadlines and writer's block really are two sides of the same coin, no matter what you do. Here's another way of thinking about it, because it is the way it is. Deadlines kill writer's block. They slay it. Deadlines put an end to it right away because they don't allow it. It's just pressure. And it's just pressure. And pressure to succeed, to be ready, to finish on time, that kind of pressure is a good thing. So if you think you have writer's block, give yourself a deadline. Deadlines remind us the story, the job, is bigger than our mood. The writer's block, it evaporates the moment we begin. You know, it's cool. It's a good thing. And that goes for everything else, you know. If you feel like I can't get started on this, I don't know what to do, you'll do the same thing, you know. That's just the way we like to get it done. I want to thank you for listening to the Harley Carnes podcasts. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can hear more by subscribing on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube, of course. And don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. One of the best ways you can support the show is by visiting the home site, harleycarnes.com. Pick up one of the books if you would. Every purchase helps to keep this podcast alive and growing. So I hope you'll read it and enjoy it. Drop a review on Amazon. My thanks, by the way, to Mekanik, also known as Johnathon Horton, for the theme music for the podcast. Rusty Roads, found and licensed through the Free Music Archive online. So thank you, as always, for joining us. I appreciate you, truly do. I'm Harley Carnes. We'll talk soon.